Lila Monroe thought she was free. She rebuilt her life, escaped the man who crushed her spirit, and finally tasted success. But on a perfect Saturday afternoon in downtown Chicago, her ex-husband cornered her against a storefront window and whispered the words that brought every nightmare flooding back. No one saw. No one helped. Until a stranger in a tailored coat appeared out of nowhere and asked one quiet question that changed everything. Is he bothering you? What happened next tore her old world apart and built a new one she never imagined possible. Drop a like, comment your city below, and stay until the end, because this story only gets wilder. The sun hung high over Michigan Avenue, glinting off the glass towers and casting long shadows across the crowded sidewalks. It was the kind of afternoon that felt like a postcard. Blue sky, warm breeze, tourists with cameras, street musicians playing jazz on the corner. Lila Monroe stood outside a boutique she'd never let herself enter before, holding a small bag with tissue paper peeking out the top. Inside was a silk blouse she didn't need. She'd bought it anyway. Because she could. Because for the first time in 3 years, she had money that was hers. A paycheck with her name on it. A life that didn't require permission. She let herself smile just a little as she adjusted the strap of her purse and turned toward the intersection. The city felt different now. Not safer, exactly, but less hostile. Like it might let her exist without punishing her for it. That feeling lasted exactly 4 more steps. Lila. The voice came from behind her, low and familiar, and it turned her blood to ice. She stopped walking. Her hand tightened around the boutique bag until the handles cut into her palm. She told herself to keep moving. Told herself she didn't have to turn around. Told herself 100 things that didn't matter because her body had already frozen in place like it always did when he said her name that way. Slowly, she turned. Gavin Cross stood 3 feet away, hands in the pockets of an expensive suit, sunglasses pushed up into his perfectly styled hair. He looked like a man who just stepped out of a business lunch. Polished, confident, untouchable. Gavin. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "Didn't think I'd run into you here," he said, smiling like they were old friends. Like he hadn't spent 2 years making sure she couldn't sleep through the night without waking up in a panic. "I was just leaving. Were you?" He took a step closer. Not aggressive, just close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same one he'd always worn, the one that used to make her stomach turn. "You look good. New clothes?" She didn't answer. "I've been calling," he said, his tone still light, still casual. "You changed your number." "I did." "That's rude, Lila. We were married." "Were." His smile tightened. Just a flicker, just enough to remind her what lived underneath. "You really think a piece of paper changes anything?" She took a step back. He matched it. "I need to go," she said. "We should talk." "No." "Lila, I said no." He moved fast, not violent, not loud, nothing the Saturday crowd would notice. Just a hand on her elbow, guiding her toward the storefront window like he was helping her avoid traffic. To anyone watching, it probably looked protective, but his grip was iron. "Stop," she said, trying to pull away. "I'm not done." "Let go of me." His thumb pressed into the soft part of her wrist, right where the bone sat close to the skin. It was a small motion, precise, practiced, the kind of thing that left no marks but sent a very clear message. Lila's breath hitched. "You're making a scene," he said quietly, still smiling. "I'm not going anywhere with you. You don't get to decide that." "I do now." Gavin's expression shifted. The smile stayed in place, but his eyes went flat. "You think you're safe because you got a job? Because you moved into some shitty apartment in Wicker Park and started pretending you're someone else?" "I'm not pretending. You're mine, Lila. You've always been mine, and you're coming home." "I am home." He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper that only she could hear. "You really want to do this the hard way? Because I will burn your entire life down. I'll call your boss. I'll tell everyone what you really are. I'll make sure you never work in this city again." She felt the tears coming and hated herself for it. Hated that after everything, after all the therapy and all the restraining orders and all the nights she'd spent rebuilding herself piece by piece, he could still do this to her with just a few words. "Please," she whispered, "just leave me alone." "Not a chance." His hand tightened. and then a voice cut through the noise of the street like a blade. "Is he bothering you?" Lila's head snapped up. A man stood a few feet away, watching them with the kind of stillness that felt deliberate. He was tall, dark-haired, wearing a charcoal coat that probably cost more than her rent. His hands were loose at his sides. His expression was calm, but there was something in his eyes that made Gavin's grip falter. "We're fine," Gavin said, his voice tight. "This is a private conversation." The stranger didn't look at him. He looked at Lila. "Ma'am?" Lila opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Gavin stepped between them, his posture shifting into something more aggressive. "I said we're fine. Move along." The stranger tilted his head slightly, like he was considering something. Then he spoke again, quieter this time, but with a weight that made the air feel heavier. "Take your hand off her." Gavin laughed. "You've got to be kidding me." "I'm not. Do you know who I am?" "No." The stranger's voice didn't change. "And I don't care." Gavin's jaw clenched. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but you're still holding her." For a long moment, no one moved. The crowd flowed around them like water around stones, oblivious. Somewhere down the block, a car horn blared. A woman laughed. Life kept going, indifferent. Then the stranger took a step forward. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't loud. It was just a single step, deliberate and unhurried, and somehow it changed everything. Gavin let go. Lila stumbled back, clutching her wrist, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack a rib. "Smart," the stranger said. Gavin's face flushed red. "You have no idea what you just walked into." "Then explain it to me." "She's my wife." "Ex-wife," Lila said, her voice shaking. Gavin rounded on her. "Don't!" The stranger moved again, not between them this time, just closer. Close enough that Gavin had to look up slightly to meet his eyes. "You were leaving," the stranger said. It wasn't a question. "This isn't over," Gavin hissed. "Yes, it is." "You don't know who you're dealing with." "Neither do you." Gavin stared at him for a long moment, his fists clenched, his face twisted with fury. Then he stepped back, adjusted his suit jacket, and forced his expression into something resembling control. "We'll finish this later," he said to Lila. "No," the stranger said. "You won't." Gavin's mouth opened like he was going to say something else. Then he seemed to think better of it. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd without looking back. Lila stood there shaking, her breath coming in short gasps. The stranger watched Gavin until he was out of sight. Then he turned to her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. She didn't trust her voice yet. "Do you need to sit down?" She nodded. He gestured toward a bench a few yards away, near the corner where the jazz musician was packing up his saxophone. Lila walked on autopilot, her legs unsteady, her mind still catching up to what had just happened. She sat. He didn't. "Thank you," she managed. "You don't need to thank me." "I do. You—" Her voice broke. She swallowed hard and tried again. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." She looked up at him, confused. "Men like that," he said, his tone flat, "don't stop unless someone makes them." "You don't even know me." "I know him." Lila blinked. "What?" "Not personally, but I know the type." He glanced down the street in the direction Gavin had gone. "He'll come back." "I know." "Do you have somewhere safe to go?" She almost laughed. "I thought I did." The stranger was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a card. Plain, black, just a name and a phone number. Roman Vale. "If he bothers you again," Roman said, "call me." Lila stared at the card. "Why would you help me?" "Because no one else will." She didn't know what to say to that. Roman turned to leave, then paused. "And for what it's worth," he added, "you don't look like someone who should be afraid." "I am, though." "I know, but you shouldn't be." And then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd as quietly as he'd appeared. Lila sat on the bench for a long time after that, turning the card over in her hands, trying to make sense of what had just happened, trying to convince herself that Gavin wouldn't come back, that the stranger, Roman, was wrong, but deep down, she knew he wasn't. But by the time Lila made it back to her apartment, the sun was starting to dip below the skyline. Her hands were still shaking. She locked the door behind her, tested the handle twice, and then stood in the middle of her tiny living room, staring at nothing. The apartment wasn't much. One bedroom, a kitchen the size of a closet, A bathroom with a shower that only worked if you jiggled the handle just right. But it was hers. She'd signed the lease herself, paid the deposit herself, picked out the furniture from a thrift store, and assembled it with a screwdriver and a YouTube tutorial. For 6 months, it had felt like freedom. Now it just felt fragile. She set the boutique bag on the counter and pulled out her phone. No missed calls. No texts. Nothing from Gavin. Not yet. She thought about the card in her purse, about Roman Vale, whoever he was, about the way he'd looked at Gavin like he was something that needed to be removed. She pulled the card out and stared at it. Then she put it back. She told herself she wouldn't need it, that Gavin would leave her alone now, that the divorce was final and the restraining order was still active and he had no reason to risk everything just to drag her back into his life. She told herself a lot of things that night. None of them helped her sleep. Monday morning came too fast. Lila stood in front of her bathroom mirror, buttoning her blouse with fingers that still felt unsteady. She'd barely slept. Every sound in the hallway had sent her bolt upright, heart racing, convinced Gavin was outside her door. He wasn't, but that didn't mean he wouldn't be. She tied her hair back, applied lipstick she didn't need, and tried to look like someone who had her life together. The reflection staring back at her didn't quite sell it. Her phone buzzed. She jumped. It was just a calendar reminder. Monday, 9 a.m. Weekly team meeting. Right. Work. The one place that still felt normal. She grabbed her bag and headed out. Talked. The architecture firm where Lila worked was housed in a converted warehouse in the West Loop, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. It was the kind of place that looked effortlessly cool in magazine spreads. The kind of place where 20-somethings in expensive sneakers talked about disrupting the urban landscape over cold brew. Lila didn't fit the aesthetic. She was older than most of the junior designers, quieter than the senior partners wanted, and too scarred by her past to play the networking game the way everyone else did. But she was good, really good. Good enough that when the firm landed its biggest contract in 5 years, a luxury mixed-use development downtown, she'd been the one tapped to lead the design team. It was the first time in her life that someone had looked at her work and seen her, not Gavin's shadow. She walked into the office at 8:45, nodding at the receptionist as she passed. The open floor plan was already buzzing with activity. Designers hunched over drafting tables, architects arguing over renderings. The hum of creativity and caffeine filling the air. Lila headed toward the conference room, her notebook tucked under one arm, and froze. Gavin was standing in the lobby. He wasn't alone. 2 men in suits flanked him, both carrying briefcases, both wearing the kind of neutral expressions that screamed lawyer. Gavin saw her the moment she walked in. He smiled. "Lila," he said, loud enough that half the office turned to look. "Good morning." She didn't move. "I think we need to talk," he continued, stepping toward her. "Privately." "No. It's about your employment here." Her stomach dropped. One of the firm's partners, David Chen, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a permanent look of mild irritation, appeared from his office, frowning. "Mr. Cross, I wasn't expecting you." "I know," Gavin said smoothly, "but I think you'll want to hear what I have to say." David glanced at Lila, then back at Gavin. "This isn't a good time." "It's about a conflict of interest and potential legal liability." David's frown deepened. "My office, now." Lila's heart was pounding. "David!" "Not now, Lila." Gavin's smile widened. "Don't worry. This won't take long." But the conference room felt smaller than it should have. Lila sat at the far end of the table, her hands folded in her lap, while Gavin and his lawyers took seats across from her. David sat at the head, arms crossed, looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. "Explain," David said. Gavin leaned back in his chair, perfectly at ease. "Lila and I were married for 2 years. During that time, she worked on several projects that my family's development company funded." "That's not relevant," Lila started. "It is," one of the lawyers interrupted, "because those projects involved proprietary designs and confidential business strategies, designs that Miss Monroe is now replicating in her work here." Lila's blood ran cold. "That's not true," she said. "Isn't it?" Gavin tilted his head. "The Riverside project you're working on now, the one with the cantilevered terraces and the sustainable water systems, sound familiar?" It did, because she designed it 4 years ago, before Gavin stole it. That was my work, she said, her voice shaking. You took it. You put your name on it and submitted it to your father's company without telling me. Gavin smiled. Do you have proof? She didn't. She'd trusted him. She'd let him look at her sketches, her plans, her ideas. She'd thought they were building something together. He'd just been taking notes. This is ridiculous, David said. Lila's designs are original. Are they? The second lawyer slid a folder across the table. These are the blueprints from the Harbor Point project, Cross Development 2022. Notice the similarities? David opened the folder. His expression didn't change, but Lila saw the flicker of doubt. David? Lila, be quiet. Gavin leaned forward, his voice soft, almost kind. I don't want to make this difficult. I know you're trying to rebuild. I respect that, but you can't use my family's work to do it. It's not your work, she said, her voice breaking. It's mine. Prove it. She couldn't. Everything she'd ever designed while they were married, every sketch, every model, every blueprint, it was all gone. Deleted, destroyed, lost in the wreckage of their divorce. Gavin stood. I'll give you 24 hours to resign. If you don't, we'll file a lawsuit that'll make sure you never work in this industry again. David looked at Lila. Is any of this true? No. Then we'll fight it. Will you? Gavin's voice turned sharp. Because I guarantee you, David, the legal fees alone will bankrupt this firm before we even get to discovery. And when we do, we'll subpoena every project Lila's touched in the last 2 years, every client, every contract. You really want that kind of scrutiny? David's jaw tightened. Gavin buttoned his suit jacket. I'll be in touch. He turned to leave, and the door opened. Roman Vale stepped into the room. He didn't knock, didn't announce himself, just walked in like he owned the place, his coat still on, his expression unreadable. Gavin stopped mid-step. Who the hell are you? Roman didn't answer. He looked at Lila. You okay? She nodded, even though she wasn't. Roman turned to David. I need to borrow your conference room. David blinked. Excuse me? For about 10 minutes. Then you can have it back. I'm sorry, who are you? Roman pulled out his phone, tapped the screen twice, and handed it to David. David looked at it. His face went pale. I'll step out, he said quietly. David? Lila started, but David was already gone. Gavin laughed. I don't know what you think you're doing. Roman held up a hand. Sit. I'm not. Sit. Down. Something in Roman's voice made Gavin's lawyers exchange a glance. One of them touched Gavin's arm. Maybe we should hear him out. Gavin sat. Roman pulled out a chair and sat across from him, calm and unhurried. He didn't look at the lawyers. He looked at Gavin. You're done, Roman said. Gavin smirked. Is that supposed to scare me? No, it's supposed to inform you. Of what? That as of this morning, I own your family's debt. The smirk faltered. Every loan, every line of credit, every mortgage your father took out to keep Cross Development afloat, I bought it all. Roman leaned forward. Which means I own you. Gavin's face went white. You're lying! Roman slid a folder across the table, thicker than the one Gavin's lawyers had brought, heavier. Bank statements, loan agreements, signed contracts, all dated this morning. One of the lawyers opened the folder. His expression shifted from confusion to horror in about 3 seconds. How? Gavin started. Doesn't matter, Roman said. What matters is that you're going to leave. You're going to drop whatever bullshit case you were planning to file, and you're never going to contact Lila again. You can't do this. I already did. Gavin stood, his chair scraping against the floor. My father... Your father, Roman interrupted, mortgaged everything to cover the losses from Harbor Point, the project that failed because the design was stolen and poorly executed, the project that's currently under investigation for code violations and environmental negligence. Gavin's mouth opened. Nothing came out. You want to talk about legal liability? Roman continued. Let's talk about yours. Let's talk about fraud. Let's talk about IP theft. Let's talk about how long it'll take federal investigators to connect the dots once I hand them everything I just bought. Lila stared at him, her heart pounding. Roman stood. Get out. Gavin didn't move. Now. The lawyers were already packing their briefcases. One of them grabbed Gavin's arm. We should go. Gavin wrenched his arm free, his face twisted with fury. This isn't over. Roman's expression didn't change. Yes, it is. Gavin stormed out, his lawyers trailing behind him like debris in a wake. The door slammed. Silence. Lila sat frozen, her mind racing, trying to process what had just happened. Roman turned to her. "You're safe now." "How did you—" "I'll explain later. Right now you need to get back to work." "Roman?" "Later, Lila." He walked out before she could say anything else. She sat there for a long time, staring at the folder he'd left behind, trying to make sense of the fact that her entire world had just been dismantled and rebuilt in the span of 10 minutes, by a man she'd met 2 days ago. A man she didn't know. A man who'd just saved her life. Again. Lila didn't move for 5 full minutes after Roman left. She sat in the empty conference room, staring at the folder on the table, like it might explode if she touched it. Her hands were shaking again. Her breath was coming too fast. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly, the only sound in the sudden quiet. She heard footsteps in the hallway. David appeared in the doorway, his face still pale, his tie slightly loosened like he'd been pulling at it. "Lila." She looked up. "Are you all right?" She didn't know how to answer that. "I think so." David stepped inside and closed the door behind him. He didn't sit. He just stood there, rubbing the back of his neck, looking older than he had 20 minutes ago. "Who was that man?" "Roman Vale." "I got that part. What I mean is, who is he? What does he do?" Lila shook her head. "I don't know." "You don't know?" "No." David stared at her. "Lila, that man just walked into my office and made Gavin Cross leave like a scolded child. He had documents, financial records, things that shouldn't exist outside a bank vault. And you're telling me you don't know who he is? I met him 2 days ago. 2 days. He helped me. On Saturday. Gavin cornered me downtown and Roman stepped in." David sat down heavily in the chair Roman had vacated. "And now he's buying debt and threatening lawsuits and—" He stopped, shook his head. "This is insane." "I know. Do you?" Lila's throat tightened. "I didn't ask him to do this." "Then why did he?" "I don't know." David was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up the folder Roman had left behind and flipped it open. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. Then he closed it and set it down like it had burned his fingers. "This is real," he said quietly. "What is?" "All of it. The loans, the acquisitions. Cross-development is drowning in debt, and someone just bought all of it." He looked at her. "Your friend just became Gavin's worst nightmare." "He's not my friend." "Then what is he?" Lila didn't have an answer for that either. David stood. "Take the rest of the day off." "I have work." "Take it off, Lila. Go home. Process whatever the hell just happened, and tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next." She wanted to argue, wanted to prove she could handle this, that she wasn't falling apart, that she was still the competent architect they'd hired 6 months ago. But she was falling apart. So she nodded, gathered her things, and left. The office was quieter than it should have been. People were staring. Whispers followed her to the elevator. She kept her eyes forward, her shoulders straight, and didn't let herself cry until she was outside. The walk back to her apartment took 20 minutes. She didn't remember most of it. Her mind was stuck in that conference room, replaying Roman's voice, the way Gavin's face had gone white, the lawyers scrambling to leave. She'd spent 2 years afraid of Gavin, 2 years looking over her shoulder, changing her routines, avoiding places they used to go together. 2 years convinced that no matter how far she ran, he'd always find her. And then Roman had walked into a room and ended it, just like that. She didn't know whether to be grateful or terrified. By the time she reached her building, the sun was starting to break through the clouds. She climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her swipe the screen. "Hello?" "It's Roman." Her heart skipped. "How did you get this number?" "Does it matter?" She supposed it didn't. "What do you want?" "To make sure you're okay. I'm fine." "You don't sound fine." Lila closed her eyes. "What did you do?" "I told you, I bought his debt." "That's not an answer." Roman was quiet for a moment. She could hear traffic in the background, voices, the faint wail of a siren. He was outside somewhere, moving. "Can I come by?" he asked. "Why?" "Because you have questions and I have answers. And because I don't think you should be alone right now." "I'm fine alone." Lila, I don't even know you. I know. So why are you doing this? I'll tell you when I get there. I didn't say you could. 20 minutes. He hung up. Lila stood in the middle of her apartment, phone still pressed to her ear, and realized she'd just been outmaneuvered by a man who moved through the world like he owned it. She sat down on the couch, then stood up, then sat down again. 20 minutes. She didn't know what to do with that. She changed out of her work clothes into jeans and a sweater, washed her face, tied her hair back. She made coffee she didn't drink and straightened the throw pillows on the couch 3 times. And then she waited. Exactly 20 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Lila checked the peephole. Roman stood in the hallway, still wearing the same charcoal coat, hands in his pockets, looking like he'd walked straight out of a magazine ad for expensive whiskey. She opened the door. "Hi," he said. "Hi." They stood there for a moment, neither moving. "Can I come in?" Lila stepped aside. Roman walked past her, his presence somehow making the small apartment feel even smaller. He glanced around. The thrift store furniture, the secondhand bookshelf, the single framed print on the wall, and didn't comment. "You want coffee?" she asked. "Sure." She poured 2 cups, even though hers was already cold. She handed him one and sat on the couch. He took the chair across from her, setting his coat over the armrest. "You said you had answers," Lila said. "I do." "Then start talking." Roman took a sip of coffee, set the cup down, leaned back in the chair like he had all the time in the world. "Gavin Cross is a parasite," he said. He spent his entire life taking credit for other people's work and hiding behind his father's money. The Harbor Point project failed because the design was fundamentally flawed, and it was flawed because he stole it from someone who actually knew what they were doing. "Me? You?" Lila's chest tightened. "How do you know that?" "Because I looked into him after Saturday. I wanted to know who I was dealing with. And I found out that Cross Development has been hemorrhaging money for 3 years. Bad investments, failed projects, legal settlements from contractors who didn't get paid. They've been covering it with loans. A lot of loans." "So you bought them?" "I bought them." "Why?" Roman looked at her. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but there was something underneath that made her think he wasn't used to being asked that question. "Because men like Gavin don't stop unless someone makes them," he said, "and because you deserve better than what you got." "You don't even know me." "I know enough." "You know nothing." "I know you're scared. I know he hurt you. I know you rebuilt your life from nothing, and he's trying to take it away again." Roman leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I know what it looks like when someone's been broken and is trying very hard not to show it." Lila's throat closed. She looked away. "I didn't ask for your help," she said quietly. "I know. I don't need a hero." "Good. I'm not one." She looked back at him. "Then what are you?" Roman smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Someone who's very good at solving problems. By buying people's debt? Among other things. That's not normal." "No, it's not." Lila set her coffee cup down. Her hands were shaking again. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing." "Everyone wants something." "Not from you. I don't believe you." Roman stood. He walked to the window, looked out at the street below, his hands in his pockets. For a moment, he didn't say anything. "When I was younger," he said finally, "I watched someone I cared about get destroyed by a man who thought he was untouchable. I was too weak to stop it, too afraid, too inexperienced." He turned to look at her. "I'm not weak anymore. So this is about guilt." "Maybe. I'm not a charity case." "I never said you were. Then what am I?" Roman crossed the room and sat down on the couch beside her. Not close, but close enough that she could see the scar along his jawline, faint and old, the kind of thing you only noticed when the light hit it right. "You're someone who deserves a chance to live without looking over her shoulder," he said. "That's all." Lila wanted to believe him, wanted to take the lifeline he was offering and let herself breathe for the first time in years, but she'd learned the hard way that nothing came free. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you go back to work. You finish your project. You build the life you were always supposed to have. And Gavin? Gavin is my problem. You can't just—" "I already did." Lila shook her head. "He won't let this go. You don't know him. He'll fight. He'll find a way." "No," Roman said, his voice quiet but absolute. "He won't." "How can you be sure?" Because I'm better at this than he is. She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to argue with the calm certainty in his voice, the way he spoke like the future was already decided and he was just waiting for everyone else to catch up. I should go, Roman said, standing. Wait. He stopped. Why are you really doing this? Roman looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled again, that same sad half smile that didn't quite fit. Because someone should have done it for her, he said, and then he left. Lila sat alone in her apartment, listening to the sound of his footsteps fade down the hallway, and realized she'd just let a stranger dismantle her ex-husband's life without asking for anything in return. She didn't know whether that made her lucky or reckless. Maybe both. The next morning, Lila went back to work. She didn't want to. She wanted to stay in her apartment, hide under the covers, and pretend the last 48 hours hadn't happened. But David had texted her at 7 in the morning. Need you in the office. Important. So she went. The elevator ride up felt longer than usual. The doors opened onto the main floor and she stepped out, bracing herself for the stairs, the whispers, the questions she didn't have answers to. But the office was quiet. Too quiet. She walked toward David's office, passing empty desks and darkened conference rooms. The receptionist wasn't at her desk. The break room was deserted. Lila knocked on David's door. Come in? She opened it. David sat behind his desk, reading something on his computer screen. He didn't look up. Close the door. She did. Sit. She sat. David finally looked at her. His expression was unreadable. You're being promoted. Lila blinked. What? Senior lead architect, effective immediately. David, I don't see. It's not up for discussion. He slid a folder across the desk. This is the contract. Sign it. She didn't move. Why? Because Roman Vale called me at 6 this morning and told me that if I didn't offer you the position, he'd buy this firm and do it himself. Lila's stomach dropped. He what? He also mentioned that he's taking over the Riverside project as the primary investor, which means he now has final approval on all design decisions. David leaned back in his chair. Congratulations. You just became the most important person in this office. I didn't ask for this. I don't care. David signed the contract, Lila. She stared at him, at the folder, at the pen he'd set beside it. And if I don't? Then I fire you and hire someone who will. Lila's hands clenched. You can't do that. I can't afford not to. Roman Vale owns half the contracts in this city. If he says you're the lead, you're the lead. If he says you get a promotion, you get a promotion. And if I argue, I lose everything. So you're just going to let him control your business. David laughed. It was a bitter sound. He already does. I just didn't know it until yesterday. Lila picked up the pen. Her hand was shaking. This is insane. Yeah, it is. She signed. David took the folder back, glanced at the signature, and nodded. Good. Now get out of my office and go do your job. Lila stood. David, I don't want to hear it, Lila. I don't want to know how you know him. I don't want to know what he's planning. I just want you to design the best building this city has ever seen and make sure I don't lose my firm in the process. She left without another word. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Lila threw herself into work, burying herself in blueprints and renderings and structural calculations. She didn't take lunch, didn't take breaks, didn't let herself think about Roman or Gavin or the fact that her entire career had just been hijacked by a man she'd met 3 days ago. By the time 6 o'clock rolled around, the office was empty again. Lila sat alone at her drafting table, staring at the design she'd been working on for weeks. The Riverside project. It was good. Maybe the best thing she'd ever done. And now it belonged to Roman. She didn't hear him come in. You're still here. Lila jumped, spinning around. Roman stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, looking like he'd just stepped out of a boardroom. How did you get in? She asked. I own the building. Since when? Since this afternoon. Lila stared at him. You bought the building. I bought the building. Why? Because it was for sale. That's not an answer. Roman walked into the room, stopping a few feet from her desk. He glanced at the blueprint spread across the table. This is good, he said. Don't. Don't what? Don't pretend you care about my work. Don't pretend this is about architecture or design or anything other than whatever game you're playing. Roman looked at her. It's not a game. Then what is it? It's me making sure you get what you deserve. By controlling my life? By giving you the tools to take it back. Lila stood, her chair scraping against the floor. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for a promotion. I didn't ask for you to buy my boss's building. I didn't ask for any of it. I know. Then why are you doing it? Because no one else will. That's not good enough. Roman stepped closer. Not threatening, just close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way he held himself like a man who'd been fighting for too long. You want the truth? He asked. Yes. The truth is that I've spent the last 15 years watching men like Gavin destroy people because they can, because no one stops them, because the system protects them and punishes everyone else. He paused. I got tired of watching. So you decided to play vigilante. I decided to use the tools I have. Money. Power. Same thing. Not always. Lila shook her head. You don't even know me. You don't know what I want. You don't know what I need. Then tell me. I want to be left alone. No, you don't. Yes, I do. You want to be safe, Roman said quietly. There's a difference. Lila's breath hitched. She hated that he was right, hated that he could see through her so easily. I don't need you to save me, she said. Good, because I'm not saving you. I'm giving you a chance to save yourself. By putting me in charge of a project you own. By putting you in charge of a project that was always yours. Lila looked at the blueprints, at the design she'd poured her heart into, the design that had kept her sane through the divorce, through the restraining orders, through the sleepless nights when she thought she'd never feel safe again. What happens when you get bored? She asked. I won't. You don't know that. I do. Why? Roman was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a photograph. Old, faded, the edges worn like it had been carried for a long time. He handed it to her. Lila looked at it. A woman, young, dark hair, smiling at the camera like she didn't have a care in the world. Who is she? Lila asked. My sister. Where is she now? Dead. Lila's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. What happened? Roman took the photograph back, staring at it like he was looking at a ghost. She married a man who hurt her, who controlled her, who convinced her she was nothing without him. He slipped the photo back into his coat. And when she finally tried to leave, he killed her. Lila couldn't breathe. I was 22, Roman continued. Stupid, angry, broke. I couldn't stop him, couldn't protect her, couldn't do anything except watch her funeral and swear that I'd never be that powerless again. Roman, so no, he said, his voice hard. I won't get bored. I won't walk away. And I won't let Gavin Cross do to you what that man did to her. Lila didn't know what to say, didn't know how to respond to the rawness in his voice, the grief that still clung to him like a second skin. I'm not your sister, she said quietly. I know. I'm not a replacement. I know that too. Then what am I to you? Roman looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since they'd met, she saw something vulnerable in his eyes. Someone who deserves better, he said. They stood there in the empty office, the city lights glowing through the windows, and Lila felt something shift inside her, something small, fragile, but real. Okay, she said. Okay, I'll finish the project. I'll take the promotion. I'll let you do whatever it is you're doing. She paused. But if you hurt me, I won't. If you lie to me, I won't. If you try to control me, I won't. Lila searched his face, looking for the crack, the lie, the thing that would prove he was just another man who wanted something from her. She didn't find it. One chance, she said. Roman nodded. One chance. He turned to leave. Roman. He stopped. Thank you. He didn't turn around, but she saw his shoulders relax, just slightly. You're welcome. And then he was gone. Lila stood alone in the office, staring at the blueprints, and realized she'd just made a deal with a man who could either save her life or destroy it. She didn't know which. But for the first time in 2 years, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. The hope lasted 3 days. 3 days of Lila throwing herself into the Riverside project, refining every detail, pushing her team harder than she'd ever pushed them before. 3 days of pretending that everything was normal, that her promotion was earned and not orchestrated, that Roman Vale was just an investor and not the man who'd quietly dismantled her ex-husband's empire over a weekend. 3 days of silence from Gavin. She should have known better. On Thursday morning, Lila arrived at the office to find police cars parked outside. 2 of them, lights off but still imposing. Her stomach dropped before she even stepped through the door. David was standing in the lobby, talking to a detective in a rumpled suit. He saw Lila, and his expression shifted from stressed to something worse. Guilty. "What's going on?" Lila asked. The detective turned, mid-40s, graying hair, the kind of tired eyes that said he'd seen too much and stopped being surprised by any of it. "Ms. Monroe?" "Yes." He pulled out a badge. "Detective Harris, I need to ask you a few questions." Lila's throat tightened. "About what?" "About your relationship with Gavin Cross." The floor seemed to tilt. "I don't have a relationship with him. We're divorced." "I'm aware, but Mr. Cross filed a report yesterday claiming you've been harassing him, stalking, making threats." Lila's blood went cold. "That's not true. He says you've been calling him, showing up at his home, that you threatened to ruin his reputation if he didn't pay you money. That's insane. I haven't contacted him at all." Harris pulled out a small notebook. "He provided phone records, calls from your number, texts." "I didn't send any texts." "Do you still have your phone?" "Of course I do." "Can I see it?" Lila's hands were shaking as she pulled her phone from her purse and handed it over. Harris scrolled through her recent calls, her messages, his expression neutral. "There's nothing here," she said, "because I didn't call him." Harris handed the phone back. "Then someone's using a spoofed number. Or he's lying." "He's lying. Maybe, but I still have to investigate." He closed his notebook. "I'll need you to come down to the station. Answer a few questions officially." "Am I being arrested?" "Not yet, but if you don't cooperate, that could change." David stepped forward. "Detective, Miss Monroe has been here all week. We have security footage, timestamps. She hasn't left the building except to go home." Harris looked at him. "I'll need copies of that footage." "You'll have it by this afternoon." "Good." Harris turned back to Lila. "I'll be in touch. In the meantime, stay away from Gavin Cross. No contact, no proximity. Understood?" Lila nodded, her voice stuck somewhere in her chest. Harris left. The lobby felt quieter without him, but no less suffocating. David pulled Lila aside, his voice low. "This is bad." "I know. If he's fabricating evidence, he is. Then we need proof. Real proof. Not just your word against his. I don't have proof. I don't have anything." David rubbed his face. "Call Roman." "What?" "Call him. Tell him what just happened, because if anyone can fix this, it's him." Lila wanted to argue. Wanted to prove she could handle this herself, that she didn't need Roman swooping in to save her every time Gavin decided to make her life hell. But David was right. She didn't have a choice. She stepped outside, away from the stares and the whispers, and dialed Roman's number. He answered on the second ring. "Lila, Gavin filed a police report. He's claiming I've been harassing him." Silence. "Roman?" "I'm here." "Where are you?" "Outside my office." "Stay there. I'm coming." "You don't have to." "I'm already on my way." He hung up. Lila stood on the sidewalk watching traffic stream past and wondered how her life had turned into this. A week ago, she'd been invisible, unremarkable, safe. Now she was caught in the middle of a war she didn't start and couldn't win. Roman arrived 15 minutes later, stepping out of a black car that looked like it cost more than Lila's annual salary. He crossed the sidewalk in long strides, his expression unreadable. "Tell me everything." Lila did. The detective, the phone records, the threats Gavin claimed she'd made. Roman listened without interrupting. When she finished, he pulled out his phone and made a call. "I need everything on Gavin Cross's phone activity for the last 72 hours. Calls, texts, location data, everything." He paused. "I don't care how you get it. Just get it." He hung up. "Who was that?" Lila asked. "Someone who owes me a favor." "Roman, if you're doing something illegal..." "I'm not." "That didn't sound legal." Roman looked at her. "Do you want to win, or do you want to play fair?" I want to not go to jail for something I didn't do. Then let me handle this. By breaking the law? By using the tools I have? Lila shook her head. You can't just... Lila. Roman's voice was quiet but firm. Gavin is trying to destroy you. He's fabricating evidence, filing false reports, weaponizing the legal system to make you look like the villain. If you try to fight him by the rules, you'll lose. So your solution is to break them? My solution is to make him regret starting this. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that wasn't how the world was supposed to work, that justice mattered, that doing the right thing would win in the end. But she'd already learned that lesson the hard way. The right thing didn't win. Power did. What are you going to do? She asked. Whatever it takes. Roman's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, read something, and his jaw tightened. What? Lila asked. Gavin didn't just file a police report. He filed for a restraining order. Against you. Lila's stomach dropped. He what? Hearing is scheduled for Monday morning. If the judge grants it, you won't be able to go within 500 feet of him, which means you can't go to work. The office is 4 blocks from his condo. I know. He planned this. Of course he did. Lila felt the panic rising, clawing at her throat. I can't lose this job. I can't. You won't. You don't know that? Roman stepped closer, his hands on her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Lila, listen to me. You are not going to lose your job. You are not going to jail. You are not going to let him win. He's already winning. No, he's desperate, and desperate men make mistakes. What if he doesn't? He will. Roman's phone buzzed again. He read the message and something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile. More like satisfaction. What? Lila asked. Gavin made his first mistake. What do you mean? Roman showed her the screen. It was a text log, timestamps, phone numbers, messages sent from Gavin's phone to a number registered under Lila's name. Except Lila had never seen that number before. He bought a burner, Roman said, registered it under your information, used it to send himself threatening messages so he could show them to the police. How did you get this? I told you, I have tools. Lila stared at the messages, at the evidence of Gavin's lies laid out in black and white. This proves he's lying. It does. So we take this to the detective. No. Why not? Because if we show our hand now, Gavin will just destroy the evidence and claim we fabricated it. We need to wait. Let him think he's winning, and then we bury him. Lila wanted to trust him, wanted to believe that Roman knew what he was doing, that he had a plan, that this would all work out, but trust didn't come easy anymore. What if this backfires, she asked. It won't. You keep saying that, because it's true. How can you be so sure? Roman looked at her, and for the first time she saw something raw in his eyes, something that looked almost like anger. Because I've been doing this for 15 years, he said, and I've never lost. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't. The hearing was scheduled for 9 in the morning on Monday. Lila spent the weekend in a state of low-grade terror, unable to sleep, unable to eat, unable to do anything except replay worst-case scenarios in her head. Roman called her twice, once on Saturday to tell her not to worry, once on Sunday to tell her the same thing. Neither call helped. Monday morning came too fast. Lila dressed in her most professional outfit, tied her hair back, and tried to look like someone who hadn't spent the last 48 hours on the verge of a breakdown. She met Roman outside the courthouse. He was already there, leaning against the stone railing, looking calm in a way that made her want to scream. You ready? He asked. No. You'll be fine. You don't know that. I do. They walked inside together. The courthouse was busy, people moving through the halls like ants, lawyers in suits, families waiting on benches, the hum of bureaucracy grinding forward. Gavin was already in the courtroom when they arrived. He sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, looking calm and collected, like a man who knew he'd already won. Lila felt her stomach turn. Roman guided her to the defendant's table. They sat, waited. The judge entered. A woman in her 60s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. She sat, adjusted her glasses, and looked at the case file. This is a petition for a restraining order filed by Gavin Cross against Lila Monroe. Mr. Cross, you're claiming harassment and threats? Gavin stood. Yes, Your Honor. Present your evidence. Gavin's lawyer stood and began laying out the case. Phone records. text messages, testimonies from neighbors who claimed they'd seen Lila outside Gavin's building. It was all lies, but it was convincing. Lila felt the walls closing in. Then it was her turn. Roman stood. He didn't introduce himself, didn't make a speech. He just placed a folder on the judge's bench. "What is this?" the judge asked. "Evidence that Mr. Cross fabricated every claim in his petition." Gavin's lawyer shot to his feet. "Objection. We haven't seen this evidence." "You will now," Roman said. The judge opened the folder. Her expression didn't change, but Lila saw her eyes narrow as she read. "This is a phone record," the judge said slowly, showing that the number used to send threatening messages to Mr. Cross was purchased by Mr. Cross himself. Gavin went pale. It also shows GPS data placing Mr. Cross outside Miss Monroe's apartment on 3 separate occasions, not the other way around. Gavin's lawyer looked like he'd been hit with a brick. "Your Honor, we had no knowledge." "Save it." The judge closed the folder and looked at Gavin. "Mr. Cross, did you file a false report?" "No, Did you purchase a phone and register it under Ms. Monroe's name?" "That's not—" "Answer the question." Gavin's mouth opened, closed. He looked at his lawyer. The lawyer looked at the floor. "I was trying to protect myself," Gavin said finally. "By committing fraud? She's been threatening me. With a phone you bought yourself?" Silence. The judge leaned back in her chair, her expression cold. "Mr. Cross, I'm denying your petition. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for potential charges of filing a false report and harassment." "Your Honor, we're done here." The gavel came down. Gavin stood frozen, his face red, his hands clenched. He looked at Lila, then at Roman. And Roman smiled. It was a small smile, almost polite, but the message was clear: you lose. Gavin stormed out of the courtroom, his lawyer scrambling to keep up. Lila sat in her chair, her heart pounding, her mind struggling to catch up with what had just happened. "Is it over?" she asked. Roman shook his head. "Not yet." They walked out of the courthouse together. The sun was too bright, the air too warm, everything feeling surreal. "What happens now?" Lila asked. "Now we finish it." "How?" Roman pulled out his phone, made another call. "It's time," he said to whoever was on the other end. "Send everything to the feds." He hung up. "What did you just do?" Lila asked. "I told you, I bought Gavin's debt, which means I have access to every contract, every invoice, every financial record Cross Development has touched in the last 5 years. Roman looked at her. "And it turns out there's a lot of fraud buried in those files. You're turning him in. I'm giving the authorities what they need to do their job." "That's the same thing." "Is it?" Lila didn't know how to answer that, didn't know if it mattered. "What about me?" she asked. "You go back to work, you finish your project, you live your life. Just like that? Just like that." "And Gavin?" Roman's expression hardened. "Gavin is about to learn what it feels like to have his world taken apart piece by piece." Lila should have felt bad for him. She didn't. By Thursday, the news broke. Federal investigators had raided Cross Development's offices, seized files, arrested 2 senior executives. Gavin's father was under investigation for tax evasion and wire fraud. The story was everywhere: cable news, front page of the Tribune, social media buzzing with speculation. Lila watched it unfold from her desk, her hands shaking as she scrolled through article after article. Roman had done this. Not just exposed Gavin, destroyed him. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Lila." It was Gavin. His voice sounded wrong, tight, broken. "Don't call me," she said. "You did this." "No, you did this." "I'm going to lose everything." "Good." "Lila, you tried to ruin my life. You tried to take my job. You tried to put me in jail for something I didn't do." Her voice was steady now, cold. "So yeah, I hope you lose everything." "I loved you." "No, you didn't. You never loved me. You loved controlling me. And now you can't." Silence. "Goodbye, Gavin." She hung up. And for the first time in 3 years, she felt free. That night, Roman showed up at her apartment unannounced. Lila opened the door and found him standing in the hallway, hands in his pockets, looking tired. "Hi," he said. "Hi. Can I come in?" She stepped aside. Roman walked to the window, looked out at the city lights, and didn't say anything for a long time. "I saw the news," Lila said. "I figured—" "Is it done?" "Almost." "Almost?" Roman turned to face her. "There's one more thing." "What?" He pulled a folder from his coat, thicker than the others, heavier. "What is this?" Lila asked. "Proof." "Of what?" "That the Harbor Point design was yours. That Gavin stole it. That every project cross-development built in the last 4 years was based on work you did and never got credit for." Lila's breath caught. Roman set the folder on the table. "I found the original files, your sketches, your notes, emails between you and Gavin where he asked for your input and then submitted it as his own. How? I had people go through everything, every hard drive, every backup, every cloud storage account." He paused. "It's all here." Lila opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were pages and pages of documents. Designs she'd forgotten, ideas she'd abandoned, work she thought was lost forever. "This is mine," she whispered. "I know." "He stole all of it." "I know." Lila looked up at Roman, tears blurring her vision. "Why didn't he just let me go?" "Because men like him don't let go. They destroy." "And men like you?" Roman smiled, sad and tired and honest. "We destroy them first." Lila didn't know what to say, didn't know how to process the enormity of what Roman had just handed her, her work, her proof, her vindication. "What do I do with this?" she asked. "Whatever you want, publish it, sue him, or just keep it and know that you were right all along." "What would you do?" "I'd make sure the whole world knew what he did." Lila looked at the folder, at the years of stolen work laid out in front of her. "Then that's what I'll do," Roman nodded. "Good." He turned to leave. "Roman," he stopped. "Thank you." "You already said that." "I know, but I mean it." Roman looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked back across the room, stopped in front of her, and did something she didn't expect. He hugged her. It wasn't romantic, wasn't possessive. It was just a hug. The kind that said, "You're not alone and I've got you and you're going to be okay." Lila let herself lean into it, let herself feel safe for the first time in longer than she could remember. When they pulled apart, Roman's eyes were bright. "You're going to be fine," he said. "I know." "Better than fine." "Yeah?" "Yeah." He left without another word. Lila stood in her apartment, holding the folder, and realized that somewhere along the way she'd stopped being afraid. She'd stopped being a victim. She'd started being herself again. And it felt like coming home. The folder sat on Lila's kitchen table for 2 days before she opened it again. She'd circle it like it was something dangerous, make coffee, sit down, stare at it, then get up and find something else to do. Laundry, dishes, reorganizing her bookshelf for the 3rd time, anything to avoid looking at 4 years of stolen work. On Saturday morning, she finally forced herself to sit down and go through it, page by page, design by design. Every sketch she'd drawn in the margins of notebooks while Gavin slept, every calculation she'd worked out on napkins at dinner, every idea she'd shared because she thought they were partners. He'd taken all of it, the Harbor Point project, the mixed-use development on Ashland, the boutique hotel in Lincoln Park that won awards. Her fingerprints were on every single one, buried under Gavin's name and his father's money. By the time she reached the last page, her hands were shaking and her coffee had gone cold. Her phone rang. She almost ignored it. Then she saw the name, Roman. "Hello? Have you eaten today?" Lila blinked. "What?" "Food. Have you had any?" Why are you asking me that?" "Because you've been sitting at your kitchen table for 3 hours going through that folder, and I'm willing to bet you forgot to eat." Lila's head snapped toward the window. She stood, walked over, looked down at the street. Roman was leaning against a car across from her building, phone to his ear, looking up at her window. "Are you stalking me?" she asked. "I prefer the term checking in." "That's stalking. Come down." "Why?" "Because I brought lunch and you're going to eat it." "I'm fine." "Lila," she sighed, "give me 5 minutes. I'll be here." She hung up, changed out of the sweatpants she'd been wearing for 2 days, and headed downstairs. Roman was waiting on the sidewalk with a paper bag that smelled like heaven. He handed it to her without a word. "What is this?" she asked. "Tie. From that place on Division you like." "How do you know I like it?" "I asked around." "That's creepy." "That's thorough." He gestured toward a bench near the corner. "Come on." They sat. Lila opened the bag and found pad thai, spring rolls, and mango sticky rice. Her stomach growled loud enough that Roman smiled. "Told you," he said. "Shut up." She ate. Roman sat beside her, watching the street, not saying anything. It should have been awkward. Somehow it wasn't. "I went through the folder," Lila said eventually. "And?" "You were right. He stole everything." "I know. I designed buildings that won awards, that got written up in magazines, that made his family millions." She set down her fork. "And I got nothing. You got out. That's not enough." "No, it's not." Lila looked at him. "What would you do?" "I told you. I'd make sure everyone knew." "How?" Roman pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and handed it to her. It was an email draft. Already written. Already addressed to every major architecture publication in the country, plus the Tribune, the Sun-Times, and half a dozen industry blogs. The subject line read, "The real architect behind cross-development's success." Lila's breath caught. "You wrote this?" "I had someone write it, but yeah." She scrolled through the email. It was brutal, detailed, backed up with attachments from the folder, side-by-side comparisons of her original sketches and the final projects, timestamps proving she'd created them years before Gavin submitted them, testimonies from former colleagues who'd seen her work. "This will destroy him," she said. "That's the idea." "Roman? He destroyed you first, Lila. He took your work, put his name on it, built his career on your talent while making sure you stayed small and scared and invisible." Roman's voice was quiet but hard. "So yes, this will destroy him, and he deserves it." Lila stared at the email. Her finger hovered over the send button. "What if this backfires?" she asked. "What if people don't believe me? What if they think I'm just a bitter ex-wife trying to get revenge?" "Then they're idiots." "But they won't, because the evidence is ironclad." "You don't know that." "I do." Lila handed the phone back. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because once I send this, there's no taking it back. Gavin will know. His family will know. Everyone will know." "Good." "It's not good. It's terrifying." Roman pocketed his phone. "You're right. It is terrifying. But so is spending the rest of your life watching someone else take credit for your work." Lila didn't answer. "You're afraid," Roman said. "I get it. But fear is what kept you trapped for 2 years. Fear is what made you think you couldn't leave. Fear is what Gavin weaponized every single day." He paused. "Don't let it win now." She wanted to argue, wanted to come up with 100 reasons why sending that email was a bad idea. But she couldn't, because he was right. "Will you send it with me?" she asked. "Of course." "Now?" "If you're ready." Lila took a breath, let it out. "I'm ready." Roman pulled out his phone again and handed it to her. The draft was still open. Her fingers shook as she moved it toward the send button. She pressed it. The email disappeared from the screen. Sent. Lila handed the phone back and immediately felt like she was going to throw up. "What did I just do?" she whispered. "You took your life back. Or ruined it." "Same thing sometimes." She laughed. It came out shaky and wrong. "You're not helping." "I'm not trying to." They sat in silence for a while. Lila picked at her spring roll without eating it. Roman checked his phone twice, then put it away. "How long before people see it?" Lila asked. "Could be an hour, could be a day. Depends on who picks it up first." "And then what?" "Then the story gets told, and you get to decide what comes next." "What if I don't know what comes next?" Roman looked at her. "Then you figure it out. Same way you've been figuring everything else out." The email went viral by Monday morning. Not immediately. It started slow. A few architecture blogs picking it up, running it as a curiosity piece. Then one of the editors at Architectural Digest saw it and dug deeper. By noon, they'd published a full feature with the headline, "Stolen Designs: How Gavin Cross Built an Empire on His Ex-Wife's Talent." By 2 in the afternoon, it was everywhere. Lila sat at her desk, watching her phone explode with notifications. Messages from former colleagues, reporters asking for interviews, Strangers on social media calling her brave, calling Gavin a fraud, calling for accountability. It was overwhelming. It was terrifying. It was the best thing that had ever happened to her. David appeared in her doorway looking shell-shocked. "Have you seen this?" he asked, holding up his phone. "I sent it." "You what?" "I sent the email." "Well, Roman sent it, but I approved it." David stared at her. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" "I told the truth. You just declared war on one of the most powerful development families in Chicago." "They declared war on me first." David ran a hand through his hair. "Lila, this is going to get messy." "I know. The Crosses have lawyers, money, connections. They're going to come after you. Let them." "You don't mean that." "I do." David sat down heavily in the chair across from her desk. "What did Roman say?" "That I should do it." "Of course he did." David shook his head. "That man is either the best thing that ever happened to you or the worst." "I haven't decided yet." "Well, decide fast, because this is about to get a lot worse before it gets better." He was right. By Tuesday, Gavin's lawyers had issued a statement calling the allegations baseless and defamatory. They threatened legal action, promised to sue for damages. By Wednesday, 3 more architects came forward with their own stories about cross-development stealing designs. The narrative shifted from one woman's accusation to a pattern of theft. By Thursday, the federal investigation expanded. Subpoenas went out. Bank accounts were frozen. Gavin's father held a press conference where he looked old and tired and refused to answer questions. By Friday, Cross Development announced they were ceasing all operations pending the investigation. Lila watched it all unfold from the safety of her office, half expecting someone to burst through the door and tell her it was all a mistake, that she'd misunderstood, that Gavin was the real victim. No one did. Instead, her phone kept ringing. Reporters, industry leaders, other women who'd worked with Gavin and had their own stories to tell. She answered some of them, ignored most. And through it all, Roman stayed close. Not hovering, not controlling, just there when she needed him. On Saturday, he showed up at her apartment again. This time, she was expecting him. "You're late," she said, opening the door before he could knock. "Traffic." "Liar," he smiled. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside. Roman walked to the couch and sat down like he'd been there 100 times before. Lila poured 2 glasses of wine and joined him. "You've had quite a week," he said. "That's an understatement." "How are you holding up?" "I don't know. Ask me in a month." "Fair enough." He took a sip of wine. "For what it's worth, you did the right thing." "Did I?" "Yes." "People are calling me a hero." "You are." "I don't feel like one." "Heroes never do." Lila leaned back against the couch, exhausted. "What happens now?" "Now you keep working, keep building, keep being brilliant." "And Gavin?" "Gavin is finished." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." Lila looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who'd appeared out of nowhere and dismantled her ex-husband's empire like it was nothing. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "I told you, Stool." "No, the real reason." Roman was quiet for a long time. He set down his wine glass and stared at his hands. "When my sister died," he said eventually, "I was angry, furious. I wanted to hurt the man who killed her, wanted to destroy him the way he destroyed her." "Did you?" "No. He died in a car accident 6 months later, drunk, wrapped his car around a tree." Roman's jaw tightened. "I didn't get my revenge, didn't get justice, didn't get anything except a funeral and a lifetime of regret." "Roman, so when I saw you on that sidewalk with Gavin's hand on your wrist and terror in your eyes, I saw her. I saw every woman who's ever been hurt by a man who thought he was untouchable." He looked at her, and I decided I wasn't going to let it happen again. Lila's throat closed. "I'm not your sister." "I know. You can't save her by saving me. I'm not trying to." Roman's voice was raw. "I'm trying to make sure that when I look in the mirror, I see someone who did something, someone who didn't just stand by and watch." They sat in silence, the weight of his words hanging between them. "Thank you," Lila said quietly. "You don't have to keep thanking me." "I know, but I mean it." Roman stood. "I should go." "Stay." He stopped. "Just for a little while," Lila said. "I don't want to be alone right now." Roman looked at her for a long moment. Then he sat back down. They didn't talk much after that, just sat together, drinking wine, watching the city lights outside the window. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't complicated. It was just two people who understood what it meant to survive something terrible and come out the other side. And for now, that was enough. The following Monday, Lila walked into her office to find a crowd gathered around the conference room. She pushed through, her heart pounding, half expecting another disaster. Instead, she found David standing at the head of the table with a bottle of champagne. "What's going on?" she asked. David grinned. "We got the Riverside contract." Lila blinked. "What?" "The city approved the project. Full funding, full support. Construction starts in 3 months." But nothing. You designed it. You pitched it. You earned it." David popped the champagne cork. "And now you get to build it." The room erupted in applause. Lila stood frozen, her mind struggling to catch up. She'd done it. Actually done it. One of her colleagues handed her a glass of champagne. She took it, her hand shaking. "Speech," someone called out. Speech." Lila looked around the room at the faces staring back at her. People who'd worked alongside her, people who doubted her, people who were finally seeing her for who she really was. "I don't know what to say," she started. "A few weeks ago, I thought my career was over. I thought I'd lost everything. I thought—" Her voice broke. She cleared her throat. "I thought I'd never get to do this, to build something that was mine, something that mattered." She raised her glass. "So thank you for believing in this project, for believing in me, and for giving me a chance to prove that I belong here." The room erupted again. Lila drank her champagne and tried not to cry. Later, after the celebration died down and everyone went back to work, Lila slipped outside to call Roman. He answered immediately. "Did you hear?" she asked. "I did. We got it." "I know." "Roman, did you have something to do with this?" Silence. "Roman, I may have made a few calls." "What kind of calls?" "The kind that reminded certain city officials that approving this project was in everyone's best interest." Lila closed her eyes. "You can't keep doing this." "Doing what?" "Fixing my life." "I'm not fixing it. I'm opening doors. You're the one walking through them." "That's not the same thing, isn't it?" Lila didn't know how to argue with that. Didn't know if she even wanted to. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome." "I mean it. I know." She hung up and stood on the sidewalk, watching traffic stream past, and realized something that should have terrified her, but didn't. She was starting to trust him. That night, Lila went home and opened her laptop. She pulled up the Riverside designs and started working, not because she had to, not because anyone was watching, because she wanted to. For the first time in years, she wasn't designing out of fear or obligation or the desperate need to prove herself. She was designing because it was what she loved, and that felt like freedom. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Lila threw herself into the Riverside project, refining every detail, working late into the night, pushing herself harder than she'd ever pushed before. Roman checked in occasionally. Never intrusive, just a text here and there, a coffee delivered to her office. A quiet reminder that she wasn't alone. Gavin, meanwhile, had disappeared. No statements, no press conferences, no social media, just silence. Lila tried not to think about him, tried not to wonder where he was or what he was doing or whether he was planning some final act of revenge, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the other shoe hadn't dropped yet. On a Thursday afternoon in late October, she found out she was right. She was working at her desk when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Lila Monroe?" "Yes?" "This is Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI. I need you to come down to our office." Lila's stomach dropped. "Why?" "We're conducting interviews related to the cross-development investigation. Your name came up." "I already gave a statement." "This is different. We have some questions about your relationship with Roman Vale." Lila's blood went cold. "What kind of questions?" "The kind best asked in person. Can you come in this afternoon?" "Do I need a lawyer?" "That's up to you." Lila's mind raced. "I'll be there in an hour." She hung up and immediately called Roman. It went to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. Panic started to set in. She grabbed her coat and headed for the door. David intercepted her in the hallway. "Where are you going?" "FBI wants to talk to me." "About what?" "Roman." David's expression shifted. "Lila, I have to go." "Wait, just be careful, okay?" She nodded and left. The FBI field office was in the Loop, a nondescript building that looked like every other government office in the city. Lila checked in at the front desk and was escorted to a conference room on the third floor. Agent Chen was waiting. Mid-30s, sharp suit, the kind of neutral expression that gave nothing away. Miss Monroe, thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? You always have a choice. Chen gestured to a chair. Please, sit. Lila sat. Chen opened a folder. How long have you known Roman Vale? A few weeks? And how did you meet? He helped me when my ex-husband was harassing me. Helped you how? He intervened, told Gavin to leave me alone. And then? And then he bought Gavin's debt and handed evidence of fraud to the federal government. Chen's expression didn't change. Did Mr. Vale tell you where he got that evidence? No. Did you ask? No? Why not? Lila met her eyes. Because I didn't care. Gavin was trying to destroy my life. Roman stopped him. That's all that mattered. Chen made a note. Are you aware that Mr. Vale has been under investigation for the past 18 months? Lila's heart skipped. For what? Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy. Chen leaned forward. Roman Vale is not a white knight, Ms. Monroe. He's a criminal. A very intelligent, very dangerous criminal. That's not... It is. We have evidence linking him to several illegal enterprises, offshore accounts, shell corporations, financial manipulation. Chen paused. And now we have evidence linking him to you. Lila felt the walls closing in. I didn't do anything illegal. Maybe not. But you benefited from his actions, your career, your reputation, your safety. Chen slid a document across the table. That makes you an accessory. Lila stared at the document, at the list of charges that could be filed against her. What do you want? She asked. I want you to testify against him. No. Miss Monroe. No. Chen sat back. You're protecting a man you barely know. I'm protecting a man who saved my life. He's using you. You don't know that. I do, because that's what he does. He finds vulnerable people, offers them salvation, and then uses them to further his own agenda. That's not what happened, isn't it? Chen's voice was cold. Think about it. A stranger appears out of nowhere, solves all your problems, asks for nothing in return. Does that sound real to you? Lila wanted to argue, wanted to defend Roman, wanted to prove that Chen was wrong, but the doubt was already creeping in. I need time, she said. You don't have time. We're moving on this case within the week. If you want immunity, you need to cooperate now. And if I don't, then you go down with him. Lila stood. I need to talk to my lawyer. That's your right. Chen handed her a card. But Ms. Monroe, whatever you think you know about Roman Vale, you're wrong. Lila left the building in a daze, her mind spinning. She tried calling Roman again, still voicemail. She stood on the sidewalk staring at her phone and realized she had no idea who to trust anymore. Lila sat in her car for 20 minutes before she could bring herself to drive. Her hands were shaking too badly to grip the wheel. Agent Chen's words kept looping in her head, tangling with everything she thought she knew about Roman. Criminal. Money laundering, racketeering, using you. She finally managed to start the engine and drove home on autopilot, her mind a mess of contradictions. By the time she pulled into her parking spot, it was dark and starting to rain. Her phone buzzed. Roman. She stared at his name on the screen, her thumb hovering over the answer button. She let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, he called again. This time she answered. Where have you been? The words came out harsher than she intended. Dealing with something. Why? What's wrong? The FBI wants me to testify against you. Silence. Roman? I'm coming over. No, I'm already outside. Ready. Lila looked out her window. Roman's car was parked across the street, headlights off, rain streaming down the windshield. She hung up and went downstairs. Roman was waiting under the building's awning, water dripping from his coat. He looked tired, more tired than she'd ever seen him. You want to do this out here or inside? He asked. Inside. They went up to her apartment in silence. Lila unlocked the door and let him in, but she didn't offer him a seat, didn't offer anything except the hard stare she'd been practicing for the last hour. Is it true? She asked. Is what true? All of it. Money laundering, racketeering, everything Agent Chen said. Roman didn't look away. Some of it. Lila's stomach dropped. Which parts? The parts that matter. He shrugged out of his wet coat and draped it over a chair. I move money. I make deals. I operate in spaces where the law gets complicated. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Are you a criminal? Roman smiled, but there was no humor in it. That depends on who you ask. I'm asking you. Then the answer is yes. Lila felt the floor tilt. She sat down hard on the couch, her legs suddenly unsteady. You lied to me, she said. I never lied. You let me believe I let you believe what you needed to believe, that I was someone who could help, someone who could fix things. Roman moved closer but didn't sit. And I did help. I did fix things. That part was real. But the rest wasn't. The rest was always complicated. Lila laughed. It sounded bitter even to her own ears. Complicated. That's one way to put it. Lila, they want me to turn on you. They said if I don't cooperate, I go down with you. Roman's jaw tightened. You won't. How do you know? Because I won't let that happen. You can't control everything. Watch me. She wanted to believe him, wanted to fall back into the safety of his certainty, his power, his ability to make problems disappear. But Agent Chen's voice was still in her head. He's using you. Why did you really help me? Lila asked quietly. I told you. No. The real reason. Not the story about your sister, not some noble speech about justice. The real reason. Roman was silent for a long moment. He walked to the window, looked out at the rain-soaked street, his hands in his pockets. Because I saw myself in you, he said finally. What? When I watched Gavin corner you on that sidewalk, I didn't just see my sister. I saw me, 15 years ago, powerless, angry, trying to survive in a world that rewards people like Gavin and punishes people like us. He turned to face her. I built everything I have by learning how to fight back, how to use the same tools they use, how to be smarter, faster, more ruthless. His voice was rough. And when I saw you, I thought maybe I could give someone else a chance to fight back too, without having to become what I became. Lila's throat tightened. What did you become? Someone who wins, no matter what it costs. And what did it cost? Roman looked at her for a long time. Everything that mattered. The words hung between them, heavy and true. Agent Chen said you're going down, Lila said. She said it's just a matter of time. Maybe. And you're okay with that? I've been preparing for it for years. What does that mean? Roman pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and handed it to her. It was a legal document, pages and pages of dense text. What is this? She asked. A transfer of assets. Everything I own, properties, accounts, holdings, all signed over to a trust. Why? Because when the FBI comes for me, they'll freeze everything, seize it, use it as leverage. He paused. But they can't touch what I don't own anymore. Lila scrolled through the document, her eyes catching on names and figures that made her dizzy. Who controls the trust? You do? Her head snapped up. What? It's in your name, all of it. Roman, I can't. You already did. I filed the paperwork 3 days ago. Lila stood, the phone slipping from her hands onto the couch. You can't just give me everything you own. I can, and I did. Why? Because you're the only person I trust not to destroy it. That's insane. Probably. I don't want this. I know. Then why? Because you earned it. Roman's voice was quiet but firm. You survived Gavin. You rebuilt your life. You took back what he stole. You did all of that without becoming bitter or broken or cruel. He stepped closer. That's worth more than anything I've ever built. Lila felt tears burning behind her eyes. I didn't ask for this. I know. I don't know what to do with it. Figure it out. You're good at that. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to take it back, to find someone else, to stop putting his faith in a woman he'd known for less than 2 months. But she couldn't, because part of her, the part that had spent years being told she was worthless, needed to hear that someone believed she was worth something. What happens to you? She asked. I have a plan. What kind of plan? Roman smiled. The kind that involves disappearing before the FBI can build their case. You're running. I'm relocating. That's the same thing. Not really. Roman, I've already made arrangements. New identity, new city, new life. He paused. I'll be gone by Monday. Lila's chest tightened. And you're just telling me this now? I wasn't sure you'd care. Of course I care. Why? The question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried to find words that made sense. Because you saved my life, she said finally, and because I think somewhere along the way you became my friend. Roman's expression softened. I'm not good at friends. Neither am I. Then we're even. They stood there in her small apartment, the rain tapping against the windows, and Lila realized this was goodbye. Will I ever see you again? She asked. I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. Lila crossed the room and hugged him, hard, like if she held on tight enough she could keep him from disappearing. Roman hesitated for just a moment. Then he hugged her back. Thank you, she whispered. You keep saying that. I mean it. I know. When they pulled apart, Roman's eyes were bright. Finish the Riverside project, he said. Build something beautiful. Live the life you deserve. What about you? I'll be fine. I always am. He picked up his coat and walked to the door. Roman. He stopped. Whatever you did, whatever you are, you gave me my life back. That matters. Roman looked at her one last time. So did you. And then he was gone. Lila stood alone in her apartment, staring at the closed door, and let herself cry. The next morning, Lila called Agent Chen. I'll cooperate, she said, but I need immunity, in writing, for everything. That can be arranged. And I want you to know something. What's that? Whatever Roman did, he did to help people like me. People who couldn't fight back on their own. So if you're expecting me to paint him as a monster, you're going to be disappointed. Chen was quiet for a moment. Noted. They met at the FBI office that afternoon. Lila spent 3 hours answering questions, walking them through every interaction she'd had with Roman, every piece of evidence he'd given her, every move he'd made against Gavin. She told them everything, except where he'd gone, because she genuinely didn't know. By the time she left, it was dark again. She drove home exhausted, her head pounding, her heart heavy. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. It's me, Roman said. Where are you? Somewhere warm. That's not an answer. It's the safest one. Lila pulled over into a parking lot and put the car in park. I talked to the FBI. I know. Did they find anything useful? Depends on what they're looking for. Roman, I'm fine, Lila. Better than fine. I'm free. She didn't know what to say to that. How are you? He asked. Tired. Understandable. Confused. Also understandable. Roman, She stopped, tried again. I don't know how to do this. How to just go back to normal after everything. You don't go back to normal. You build a new normal. One that's better. And if I don't know how, then you start small. One day. One project. One decision at a time. He paused. You're stronger than you think, Lila. I don't feel strong. You will. Lila wiped her eyes. Will you really be okay? Yes. How do you know? Because I've been running my whole life. I'm good at it. That's sad. Maybe, but it's true. They were quiet for a moment, just breathing into their phones, connected by nothing but a signal bouncing through satellites. Take care of yourself, Roman said. You too. And Lila? Yeah? Don't let anyone make you small again. The line went dead. Lila sat in her car for a long time, staring at her phone, and realized she was on her own now. Really, truly on her own. And for the first time in her life, that didn't terrify her. The Riverside project broke ground in January. Lila stood at the construction site on a freezing Tuesday morning, watching the bulldozers move earth, and felt something shift inside her chest. This was hers. Not Gavin's, not Roman's, not anyone else's. Hers. David came up beside her, handing her a coffee. Hell of a thing. Yeah. You did good, Lila. We'll see. No, I mean it. This is going to be the best project this firm has ever done. She smiled. No pressure. All the pressure. He grinned. But I know you can handle it. They stood together, watching the construction crews work, and Lila felt a peace she hadn't felt in years. Over the next 6 months, the building rose from the ground. Steel and glass and concrete taking shape, transforming from blueprints into something real. Lila worked harder than she'd ever worked. 18-hour days, weekends, holidays. She lived and breathed the project, pouring every ounce of herself into making it perfect. Not because she had to prove anything, but because she wanted to create something beautiful. Gavin's trial started in March. Lila didn't attend, didn't follow the coverage, didn't let herself care what happened to him. She heard through the grapevine that he'd been found guilty on multiple counts of fraud, that his family's company had collapsed, that his father had died of a heart attack 2 weeks before sentencing. She felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, not even pity, just emptiness where he used to live in her head. And that felt like freedom. In June, the architectural community held its annual gala. Lila had never attended before. Couldn't afford the ticket, didn't have the connections, didn't feel like she belonged. But this year, she was nominated for the Rising Architect Award. She almost didn't go. Then she thought about Roman's last words, "Don't let anyone make you small again." So she went. The gala was held at the Art Institute, all marble floors and soaring ceilings and people in expensive clothes drinking expensive wine. Lila wore a simple black dress she'd bought off the rack and felt completely out of place. Until they called her name. The Rising Architect Award goes to Lila Monroe for her groundbreaking work on the Riverside Development Project. Lila stood frozen for a moment, certain she'd heard wrong. David elbowed her. Go. She walked to the stage on shaky legs, accepting the crystal trophy from a woman whose name she forgot immediately. The applause was loud, overwhelming. She stood at the podium, staring out at hundreds of faces, and felt her throat close. "I don't have a speech prepared," she started. "I didn't think I'd win." A few people laughed. "A year ago, I thought my career was over. I thought I'd lost everything. I thought I'd never get to do the work I love." She paused, her hands gripping the podium. "But I was wrong, because the thing about losing everything is that it teaches you what really matters." She looked out at the crowd. "It's not the awards. It's not the recognition. It's not even the buildings." Her voice steadied. "It's the people who believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. It's the courage to rebuild when everything falls apart. It's the choice to keep going even when you don't know where you're going." She held up the trophy. "This doesn't belong to me. It belongs to everyone who's ever been told they weren't good enough, who's ever been silenced or stolen from or made to feel invisible." Her eyes burned. "You are good enough. Your work matters, and you deserve to take up space in this world." The applause was deafening. Lila left the stage and spent the rest of the night shaking hands, accepting congratulations, and pretending she wasn't about to cry. Later, she stepped outside for air. The night was warm, the city alive with lights and movement. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She smiled and answered. "Did you watch?" she asked. "Of course," Roman said. "How?" "I have my ways." "You're supposed to be in hiding." "I am. Doesn't mean I can't keep tabs." Lila leaned against the stone railing, looking out at the skyline. "I won." "I know. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. You just would have taken longer." She laughed. "Maybe. How does it feel?" Lila thought about it, about the last year, about everything she'd survived and everything she'd built and everything she'd become. "It feels like I'm finally standing up straight," she said. "Good. Are you happy, wherever you are?" Roman was quiet for a moment. "I'm working on it." "That's not a yes. It's the closest I've got right now." "Then keep working on it." "I will." They were quiet for a while, just breathing, just being. "I should go," Roman said finally. "I know. Take care of yourself, Lila." "You too." "And Lila?" "Yeah?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me what it looks like when someone actually wins." The line went dead. Lila stood on the steps of the Art Institute, holding her trophy, and realized she didn't need him anymore. She'd needed him once, desperately. But that version of herself was gone. Now she was someone who could stand on her own, someone who could build her own future, someone who'd survived the worst and come out stronger. The Riverside project was completed in November. Lila stood in the lobby on opening day, watching people stream through the doors, marveling at the design, the soaring atrium, the sustainable materials, the way light moved through the space like water. It was everything she dreamed it could be. Better, even. A reporter from Architectural Digest approached her. "Miss Monroe, can we get a quote?" "Sure." "What does this building represent to you?" Lila looked up at the ceiling, at the glass and steel that had started as sketches in a notebook she'd carried through the darkest period of her life. "It represents survival," she said, "and the choice to build something beautiful out of something broken." The reporter scribbled notes. "That's poetic." "It's true." Later that night, Lila went back to her apartment, the same small third-floor walk-up she'd been living in for over a year. She could afford something bigger now, something nicer, but she wasn't ready to leave yet. This place had been her sanctuary when she had nothing, and she wanted to remember what that felt like, wanted to stay grounded in the reality that everything she had now, she'd earned. She made tea, curled up on her secondhand couch, and opened her laptop. 3 new project proposals, 2 interview requests, 1 invitation to speak at a conference in San Francisco. She read through them all, feeling the weight of possibility. Then she closed the laptop and just sat there, thinking about Gavin, rotting in a federal prison somewhere. Thinking about Roman, living under a new name in a city she'd never see. Thinking about herself, the woman she used to be and the woman she'd become. She'd learned something important over the last year, something she wished she'd known earlier. You can't save yourself by waiting for someone else to do it. You can't build a life on someone else's foundation, and you can't let your past define your future. Roman had given her tools, resources, protection. But the strength to use them? That had always been hers. The courage to rebuild? Hers. The refusal to stay broken? Hers. She'd done the work, made the hard choices, survived the fear, and now she got to live with the results. Her phone buzzed one last time that night. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail, let Roman fade into memory where he probably belonged. But she picked up anyway. "Hello?" Silence. Then, "I'm not going to call again." Lila's chest tightened. "I know. I just wanted to hear your voice one more time." "Roman, you're going to do incredible things, Lila. Things I'll never see. And that's okay, because knowing they'll happen is enough." "Where will you go?" "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can stop running." "Will you be happy?" "I'll try." "That's all any of us can do." Roman laughed softly. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." "Liar." "It's true." They were quiet for a long moment. "Goodbye, Lila." "Goodbye, Roman." "And Lila?" "Yeah? You were never small. You were just surrounded by people who needed you to be." The line went dead for the last time. Lila set down her phone and let herself cry. Not from sadness, not from fear. From relief. Because she'd survived. Really, truly survived. And on the other side of survival, she'd found something she never expected. Herself. 6 months later, Lila stood at another podium. Another award ceremony. This time for the Riverside Project, which had just won Building of the Year. She accepted the award with grace, gave a short speech about sustainability and community, and left the stage to thunderous applause. But the moment that mattered came later. After the ceremony, a young woman approached her, mid-20s, nervous, clutching a portfolio. "Ms. Monroe, I'm sorry to bother you, but you're not bothering me. I just wanted to say..." The woman's voice wavered. "Your work saved my life." Lila blinked. "What?" "I was in an abusive relationship for 3 years, and I kept thinking I'd never get out, that I'd never be able to support myself, that I wasn't good enough." Tears streamed down her face. "But then I read about you, about what you survived, about how you rebuilt, and I thought, if she can do it, maybe I can too." Lila's throat closed. "So I left," the woman continued. "I got out. I went back to school, and now I'm an architect too, because of you." Lila pulled her into a hug. They stood there in the middle of the crowded ballroom, 2 women who'd survived the kind of hell that breaks most people, and Lila realized this was why it mattered. Not the awards, not the buildings, not even the recognition. The fact that her story, her survival, had given someone else the courage to save themselves. That was what mattered. That was what made it all worth it. When they pulled apart, Lila wiped her eyes. What's your name? Sarah. Sarah, you didn't rebuild because of me. You rebuilt because you're strong enough to do it. I just showed you it was possible. Sarah smiled through her tears. Thank you. No, thank you. Because Sarah had just given Lila something more valuable than any award. Proof that survival wasn't just about saving yourself. It was about showing others they could be saved too. That night, Lila went home to her apartment, still the same small third-floor walk-up, and stood at the window, looking out at the city. Chicago glittered in the darkness, a million lives unfolding in a million different ways. Somewhere out there, Roman was living under a new name, building a new life. Somewhere out there, Gavin was locked in a cell, paying for his crimes. Somewhere out there, women like Sarah were finding the courage to leave, to rebuild, to become who they were always meant to be. And here, in this small apartment, Lila Monroe stood alone. Not lonely, just alone. And that was okay, because she'd learned something crucial in the wreckage of her old life. You don't need someone to save you. You don't need permission to be great. You don't need validation from people who never saw your worth in the first place. You just need the courage to save yourself, the strength to rebuild, and the audacity to believe you deserve better. Everything else? Everything else is just noise. Lila turned away from the window and sat down at her drafting table. She pulled out a blank sheet of paper and picked up a pencil, and she started to draw. Not because someone was paying her, not because she had something to prove, but because creating something beautiful out of nothing was what she did. It was who she was. And no one, not Gavin, not fear, not the past, could ever take that away again. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, Lila kept building. And somewhere between survival and success, between fear and freedom, between the woman she was and the woman she'd become, she found something she'd been searching for her entire life. Peace. Not the kind that came from having all the answers, the kind that came from finally being okay with the questions, the kind that came from knowing that no matter what happened next, she could handle it, because she'd already survived the worst. And if she could survive that, she could survive anything.